You talk about your experience in bringing together people on a contentious issue with people who disagree. How do you pull people together? And can you give a specific example of how you've done that? We'll start with you, Carrie.
I'm going to talk about the idea in general and then specifics, because I think this is the very crux of the matter in Seattle. We know we are a city with incredible potential, wealth, a spirit of innovation, tremendous intelligence, and shared progressive values like no other place in the country, but we are not living up to our potential. And the biggest reason why, to me, is that we don't have a constructive future vision and a clear, transparent, action-oriented action plan to get to that vision where all of us, civic organizations like you, neighborhood groups, city council, staff in the city's many departments are pulling together in the same direction towards a constructive future vision. That's essentially what we need in this city right now.
Convince us that you have experience doing that.
So through the People's Waterfront Coalition, well before anybody was talking about what to do with the waterfront, I developed an organization in 2004 to focus on this opportunity of the viaduct having to come down. What do we want that space to be? And I started an organization focused on constructive future vision for a civic waterfront, 22 acres of land, city owns, but brought back into public civic use as the very heart of our city. And it started with 3 of us, and then we developed a large organization and a coalition of between 5 and 20 organizations, depending on what time in the sequence it was, and developed a vision and invited people to it. And we went through several different iterations of what could the waterfront be, several different design processes. But through this time, the city took ownership of the project, an organization developed it to lead implementation of this project, and it all started with a constructive future vision and a collaborative, inclusive attitude around how do we make a better city together. So I'll stand by that example.
Jenny Durkin, what's an example of where you've brought differing people together on a project?
I'll give you an example of that, but I do want to comment a little bit on what Carrie just talked about, because if you really look at the crux of what she worked on, it was not about a better waterfront, it was about fighting the tunnel. And it was the antithesis of bringing people together. We had a contentious battle in this city. We had city council pass an ordinance. We had the mayor veto it. We had how many votes? And in the meantime, we're fighting about it. I frankly am very thankful that the tunnel's going to be there, because in this Seattle today, we could not afford to have another 20 to 30,000 cars going through the city.
Okay.
So I think collaborating and showing results, it's all about experience. So let me tell you.
I want to hear your example, but first I want to let Carrie Moon respond to your last remark.
I don't think you were here then, so I want to respectfully tell you that that's not actually what happened. 2001 on the Design Commission is when we started the idea of how to build a great civic waterfront. I won many awards from the time period of 2004 to 2008 around the visioning of the waterfront. So I would just ask you to go back and check your facts, because there are lots of people who can vouch for the work that was done in those 5-6 years. But I'll let you continue.
Jenny, your example of how you brought different people together.
And just so everyone knows, I was here then. You know, I've worked on issues in this area, you know, like you, Ross, for over 30 years. We were 10 when we started. And on a variety of issues. I'll give you one: police reform. So you described me as a prosecutor, but for decades before that, I was a criminal defense lawyer. I was the chief federal law enforcement officer for Western Washington, so from the Canadian border to the Oregon border, dealing with chiefs of police in every major city, every small city, the prosecutors for every county in Western Washington. My job was that at that time. We suddenly saw video after video after video of usually young men of color being mistreated by the police. And it culminated in the shooting death of Indian woodcarver named John T. Williams, which was wrong. So I brought together, I had a tough choice to make, because 1/3 of our cases in our office relied on the Seattle Police Department. But we knew they needed reform. I had to pull together police leaders, trying to get city leadership, the city council, people in my office, Washington, D.C. DOJ, and work with the community, because it was all about the community. We held dozens, and this goes back to your engagement question, dozens of meetings around the city to talk about what do we need, how do we get there, what do we do. We then worked to get that consent decree in place. That took a lot of collaboration, getting diverse interests around the table and moving forward. So it's not just process, it's got to be results.